I'm so sorry. So I was talking with Heikki Mattila, who should open this event, and he cannot open the mic.
It's strange,
And
because twice we've tried it before.
yes,
it was
yes,
okay.
and he cannot open the mic. I don't know why. Now I have a feeling that the mic is open. Isn't it open now? Heikki, do you hear us? Could you speak, please? Please say something. Heikki.
Yeah, I think he is talking, but we don't hear him, even though it looks like the microphone is switched on.
Could you, Anna, open his mic?
Yeah, actually now it looks like on Teams it's open, but probably something with the computer settings needs still to be done.
Yes, or with the headphones.
Yeah, maybe take out the headphones
there is something with the headphones.
Yeah.
Maybe if Heikki takes headphones totally off, so it could help.
And plug out of the computer. So we use the laptop's own microphone. So could you, Heikki, please unplug completely the headset? Oh.
Oh, he's disappeared.
Yeah, maybe he's
yeah.
trying to log off and log in again.
That's not a bad idea.
Yes,
yeah.
I think we could wait maybe a couple of minutes and then try to reorganize ourselves so that someone else opens the defense.
Yes. Agreed. Anna, does that sound okay? To wait a couple of minutes and then reorganize ourselves?
Yeah, I guess Tina would be the one to answer that question.
Yes, Tina.
Yes, maybe we could also call to Heikki and ask if this is okay for him now when Pia has his number. So let's wait a few minutes and then if you could, Pia, make the call.
Yes.
Now Heikki is calling again. So Heikki, hey. Juuri. No nyt me päätettiin, joo.
Anna, yeah, Pia is talking, so.
Okay, Heikki is online and he's ready to open it by phone at the moment.
Yes.
And then maybe finally he joins us when he fixes the technical problems. So Heikki is here now.
Hello, Heikki.
So we begin. Esteemed colleagues, dear participants, I have been the Faculty of Law of the University of Lapland has nominated me as the chair of this public examination of Mr. Goddard's licentiate thesis. So I bid you all warmly welcome. Mr. Goddard is a holder of solicitor's diploma and a holder of a diploma in translation. And the title of his thesis is Making Legal Linguistics Mainstream in legal education. Professor Pia Lettovaaramo, University of Helsinki, acts as the opponent in the examination we now begin. So I hereby declare the event open.
Thank
Right.
you.
May I start?
Yes, you may start, so please.
Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I'm going to start with very briefly with a backstory. My presentation will be an overview of my thesis. The backstory is that it's a very strange thing, but you probably know yourself that it's only when looking back on your life that the path we follow becomes clear. And with that in mind, with the background that I have in law and in language, including a translator's certificate from the Institute of Linguists in London, and education, where I have a master's in education. So that's my background. And in 2004, I strayed by accident into the young discipline of comparative legal linguistics. And so here today, I'm presenting a thesis in that same discipline. But I have to say that in doing so, and especially through research, I'm, to use a phrase, standing on the shoulders of giants, one of whom is Professor Mattila, I have to say, as we shall see. So that's the backstory, as journalists put it. Next, before starting properly, I would like to acknowledge Emeritus Professor Mattila for his support throughout, and Emeritus Professor Lettovaaramo for many things, especially for her help in my becoming a practicing legal linguist. And finally, the rector and the staff at the University of Lapland, which I visited over some 10 years, twice a year, delivering courses basically in legal linguistics. So the main points of this introductory presentation are to start with the concept of legal linguistics and comparative legal linguistics. They overlap, but they're not exactly the same. We're going to look at the core elements very briefly of what I see as the core elements, and then why and how to teach legal linguistics and to whom to teach it. And finally, where we are at the moment, challenges to legal linguistics as an academic legal field. There's quite a large focus on that towards the end of this presentation. So legal linguistics defines as the purposive scientific study of language in legal contexts, and it does feature prominently as a professional requirement, not for all lawyers, but for most lawyers. But what about learning the practice of legal linguistics? Well, right at the very end, if we have time, we'll see some of the practical applications of legal linguistics. Because if you're going to study law at the university, the practical applications beyond working for the government or an NGO or a law firm are not clear at all, but there are many. So Marcus Galdia, who is one of the giants on whose shoulders my research stands, says that legal linguistics is linguistic operations in law, creating law, for example, with the help of language, legal argumentation, interpretation, translation, etc., etc. So this is Marcus Galdia's definition of legal linguistics. Jaakko Husa, now from the University of Helsinki, says that legal linguistics has a different focus from simple comparative law, because it targets the development, use, and characteristics of legal language. And so he goes into further details there. All the details are contained in my thesis. So comparative legal linguistics, again, according to Husserl, is a combination of comparative study of law and legal linguistics, but he asks where to put it as an academic field. And he adds that meaning we add linguistic analyses to linguistic analysis, such as history, theory, terminology, vocabulary, to what would otherwise be merely a language-savvy comparative study of law. So just to clarify, legal linguistics focuses on a single legal language, which is what most students of law would need, I would think. Whereas comparative legal linguistics highlights and compares the development, etc., and vocabulary of two or more legal languages. And I would say probably far fewer lawyers would have an interest in that, because most people, as I've discovered in many years of practice in legal linguistics, most people just are working in their own, in law firms or in government in their own country and with their own legal system. So what do we actually do with comparative legal linguistics? Well, basically, is to address conceptual problems, and in particular, marked two here, absence of equivalence and asymmetry between legal languages and legal systems. So at international level, comparative legal linguistics can look at problems of terminology, and let's have a look. That's one or two examples just to clarify. Let's imagine a terminological item of international importance, such as ship owner or crew of a ship. Or here's another one, even more important, rule of law. Well, it needs much more than a brief dictionary definition if we're trying to coordinate terms from different legal systems and different legal languages. And indeed, the Venice Commission has a rule of law checklist. It goes on for page after page. Very good bedtime reading if you can't sleep. But anyway, but it is worth a read at least once. And then there's another one. It's the 6 elements with benchmarks and standards to measure this. Going back to an item of international importance, ship owner, seafarer. So the question might be, for example, somebody who works as an entertainer on a cruise ship. Are they a seafarer? What are they exactly? And one of the students at Riga Graduate School of Law wrote a thesis on this very narrow point, a master's thesis, and did an excellent job. So the question is, who qualifies as a ship owner and who qualifies as a seafarer? That's just an example. So as I see the core elements of legal linguistics, by the way, we're about halfway through my presentation, and I'll speed up a bit if I can. We've got legal concepts, legal culture. There's, by the way, no single definition of culture, and certainly no single definition of legal culture either. But that doesn't say we should ignore them, because they do exist. Legal translation and dictionaries, legal terminology, comparative law, legal history. These are items that I would include in a program of comparative legal linguistics. But there are other items as well, which I'm afraid I just didn't have space to deal with or time. Here's another example of a concept. Professor Matala says, and the second edition of his by now very world famous book, Comparative Legal Linguistics, says that concepts differ because they're crystallizations of legal rules. And these depend on the legal system, the legal culture accordingly. So, for example, ownership, the term ownership is not defined at EU law level, while member state legal systems define ownership differently. So there is actually also a dichotomy, a difference between civil law and common law understandings of ownership. Now, that comes from a paper that I proofread and language edited just last year to, I think they're postdoctoral students or young professors, Timo Juutilainen and Jana Kaisto at Turku University. And I do work for them every year or so, and they write the most wonderful papers. There's some great academics in Finland, by the way, and I'm very lucky to have had contact with so many. So legal concepts and terminology. Countries have their own ideas about what law is for, its functions, and what they expect from it. That's David Nelken's book from 2007. He's a leading figure in this area. So, for example, one legal system may be geared to social control based on force of one way or another, or a legal system geared to solving problems based on reconciliation and reward. And these differences in reality might also be embedded in the language of the law, as one researcher, Boyne, puts it. And then, so each legal system has its own language thesaurus, dictionary, in the shape of concepts and terminology. So my hypothesis is that legal linguistics, comparative legal linguistics, should be integrated into the legal education system. But how to achieve this? Because as Emilia Lindros, also from Finland, I remember doing her doctoral thesis, brilliant it was. She says there's much discussion on the importance of legal linguistic knowledge, but little evidence of serious practical input in legal education. Absolutely right. And we shall see why in a minute. So going back to an earlier slide, we've only got half a dozen slides left. Who needs to learn comparative legal linguistics? Or as they say in Latin, or used to say, cui bono, for whose benefit? Who does benefit from studying legal linguistics? Well, translators and lawyers are the main ones, but not only. But they can benefit from knowing how different societies, different cultures address social and other institutions and social and other issues through law, language, or other means. Because what may be a legal issue in one country may be a non-issue in another country, or a legal concept that's active in one country may not even exist in another. And one example I came across of that was trying to integrate human rights law in Japan, because Japan basically doesn't have a human rights law except what they've borrowed from elsewhere. So one of the problems here, what people need to learn, is that there are few details of courses available for comparison. And all the courses I could find are in the appendix, or one of the appendices at the back of my thesis. They just aren't there, or there's hardly anything there. And the only proper program, in my view, in legal linguistics was the one we had at the Riga Graduate School of Law. It was a master's program. And although it was very successful academically, there's some wonderful theses, they just didn't work financially, unfortunately, and we had to stop it. But there we are. So I've identified some areas that stand out as being realistically achievable in this field. So to promote awareness of general differences between civil law and common law legal systems, in particular concepts and terminology. One of the things I focus on is the use of plain language. And in courses that I do, I have done it at Lapland University and also with law firms and with others, is to keep it simple. There are lots of other things we can do as well. And it works not only in English, but in other languages. So students may need intercultural communication skills, both generally and in legal contexts. And they need to know simple things like if somebody says yes in a foreign language, they may actually mean no. But that's how it is. Other possible approaches, well, some legal linguistic items, important ones like ship owner, seafarer, and so on, rule of law, as we have already seen. These could be taught because they are simple, and there is some work has been done on these. And once you see them, it's much easier to understand. So we could do that at introductory level, what used to be called as bachelor's level, and then reinforce from time to time throughout legal education and training. So we've seen legal education. This is the first time I've mentioned training, and that's important, as we shall see in a moment. So I've done courses, for example, in contract drafting or drafting generally, in ICT, information communications anyway, ICT, in international contexts, specific writing skills in English and in other languages. Just for example, if you're making a contrast and you're changing direction, and in the second sentence you use the word however to show this change in direction. In legal or professional English, better to have however as the first word in the sentence. So it's like a signpost on the road. It shows people where they're going. Lots and lots of other simple rules like that don't necessarily only refer to law. Then specific writing skills in English, also in other languages, could be introduced at different levels, like blogs, public information, leaflets, both paper and online and so on, case reports. I've just finished writing a case report, editing, and proofreading a case report for a professor from the University of Helsinki. It arrived yesterday, very late in the day, and we've done 2 checks, and it's gone back to her this morning, so she'll be able to deal with that. And she's very good at writing these, using even EU legal language. Right, coming to the end now, challenges and obstacles to development. Whereas Emilia Lindroos says, legal linguistics currently has a precarious foothold in the academic curriculum. Marco Scaldia has three notions. Firstly, problems of institutionalizing research in this area may impede its further development. In other words, as we shall see in a bit, I think on the next slide, that new areas of study, they need institutional backing. And we'll see more about that in a moment. And then another important point made by Marcus Galdia, established academia does not always embrace newly fledged fields of study, such as legal linguistics. And then he goes on to say a better defined new system, which might receive a new denomination or simply be called, for instance, legal linguistics. And some people, some professionals are quite happy to work under the umbrella of legal linguistics, but not everybody. And for example, I read just a few months ago an interesting paper by a Danish researcher who most of us probably know, highly respected, and he suggests that one area, I forget which it is now, I have his paper at home anyway, should be kind of on its own. It's that's his view, and why not? But anyway, now coming close to the end, comparative, according to Kokouksen, 3 things that he said. Comparative legal linguistics can expect a bright future, combining comparative study of law and legal linguistics. But again, he echoes Emilio Lindros when he says the advantages of this interdisciplinary field are clear, but so too are the obstacles. And then he adds, all interdisciplinary fields risk being overshadowed by older established fields, for sure, because there's a lot of battles go on in academia. As I've discovered, I think we all do one way or another. And Carlo Tuori, emeritus professor from Helsinki University, very charming gentleman. In one of his books, nearly 15 years ago now, he says, new and emerging branches of law must jostle for position, recognition, and space in the curriculum. So next on challenges, and this really is just about the end, Fiona Cowney, just a couple of years ago, said that training is not seen by the academy as the sort of intellectual pursuit that qualifies a discipline to become part of the university. That's a big problem. And another one, universities are under pressure, in Europe anyway, to focus on ECT as credits in main areas of the curriculum. And finally, according to Margaret Thornton in the legal education, student interest is limited to university requirements for a pass, that is, a grasp of doctrine and statutory law. I was going to, but I'm not. Oh yeah, sorry, this is the very last one. So some kind of institutional action, according to Carlo Tuori, is needed to ensure that legal linguistics or comparative legal linguistics takes its proper place in legal education. Example, external patrons and sponsors, trade unions, NGOs, and employers, they all have backed or supported labour law when it was a new item. Because when I was doing my legal studies, you didn't do labour law, you did contract law, and that was it. And since then, many new areas of law have emerged. And if they're purely law, it's not too hard to get them on the curriculum. Now, then we have the International Language and Law Association. I sent a link to my thesis to the vice president of ILA, that's the International Language and Law Association in Krakow, as Magdalena Szczyrpak, if that's the correct pronunciation, and the member at large, Annalisa Scheer, whom if some of you may know, Heikki certainly does, great colleague, highly respected in the field. And then marketing to sponsors, patrons, and so on, must show legal linguistics as having clear, practical, professional relevance. And finally, at last, come to the end, it's not really doable as a standalone program, as we found with the master's program in legal linguistics at the Riga Graduate School of Law. It's basically partly due to time constraints, but not only. So you might do, for example, a 24-hour starter course in legal English writing, as I have done, and then legal linguistic inputs on specific courses. I'm not going to give examples of real-world applications of comparative legal linguistics, but you can see that there are 2 pages of these, and this is where my own work lies in this field, and I'm kept pretty busy, coming up for 80 years old and still busy. So it pays the wine merchant's bill. And that's all, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry to have taken longer than planned, And thank you very much for not interrupting. So I'm going to stop sharing on this if I can manage to leave.
Thank you. Thank you. I think I just take now the chance to talk. So thank you, Professor Mattila, and thank you, Mr. Goddard. Before we start with my comments, I would be happy if it could be you. So it would be easier to me to have my comments. You were actually referring to some slides, but we didn't see the others than the first slide. I think,
no.
But it's not a problem because you were very clear in your points, and I think Anna or you could then share it to the participants by in another way. So maybe during the examination. I think it is possible, but let's start. My idea is to take up some of the main points in your speech, and the points are the concept or the definition of comparative legal linguistics. The other is core elements of comparative legal linguistics. Then I would like to talk a bit about your hypothesis, because you are claiming that that comparative legal linguistics should be integrated in the legal education, but the big question is how to achieve it. And it means that we have to go to the fourth question of mine, challenges and obstacles of this integration. And then finally, I would briefly, if we have time, because I think we can continue about 2 o'clock, I would like to speak briefly about the real work applications of comparative legal linguistics. But before I go to these questions or comments, I would briefly summarize your research done through the articles which you have taken into your thesis. And it is somehow my interpretation of your articles. And they are the 6 one which you are taken into the thesis, not the 6 one which you also refer to, but which are not part of the thesis. The first article is from 2010, and it is about a definition of legal linguistics. You are talking about legal linguistics as a discipline. The second one, which is important to you, it is a discipline. Then in the second one, you are talking about or writing about didactic aspects of legal English and having some examples of course preparation. And already there, as you have in all your articles, you have the main idea on English as a becoming or already existing global language.
Yes.
Then the third one, which is to me maybe the most challenging, is the article about elements of legal linguistics with question, is it enough to have comparative law, legal culture, and legal ideology approaches, or do we need something more? And this is, of course, what we will discuss during this afternoon. The fourth one is about learning about prospects for legal linguistics in the academic curriculum, which will, of course, again be a topic of our discussions. And then the fifth one is somehow maybe to us lawyers a little bit difficult, but you are talking about the pragmatic dimension of competence in English as special English for special purposes in cross-cultural legal context. Somehow you are, as I understood correctly, you are referring to unseen influences behind legal concepts, which is very challenging problem. And then finally, the article from 2022 is about legal terminology in English, the challenges of international context, and you are referring, as you did already in your speech, for instance, to the definition of rule of law by so-called Venice Commission. And
Yes.
you have some ideas then also how we could define the most important terms which we could then use in international dialogues and international contacts. But this is somehow my reading of your articles. And then you have, of course, the introduction and the chapter 4, in which you take up the general questions which you were presenting us in your opening speech. And then what is also important to notice, you have also something what you call so updating or something which you maybe have been thinking after you published your articles, and it is of course important also to have the new discussions. And I think one of the most important is, of course, the definition as the definition of comparative legal linguistic or legal linguistic as such, and you are quite critically arguing against the new term jurilinguistics. We can come back to that. And then you are also, which I think is very important for your topic, you are writing in your updating something about difference between education and training.
Yes.
And this is what we can talk so in the last part, when I'm interested to ask you something about a practical application of learning or teaching in comparative or only in legal linguistics. So this is all what I have to say of your thesis. But now we can call the questions and to discussion, and we could also then ask the audience finally if they have something to ask. But now I would like to have my comments, or maybe I see them more as questions, and I would like to open an academic discussion between you and me about some main ideas of your thesis. And the first one is, of course, the idea of comparative legal linguistics. Not only the idea, but the term and the concept which you are very clearly using and defining. But still, I'm wondering how you defined the relationship between legal linguistics and comparative law. So because you were maintaining that comparative legal linguistics is somehow a combination of comparative legal linguistics and comparative law, and you always need at least two languages when you talk about comparative legal linguistics. But how do you always have to have knowledge at least in two languages, and then at least knowledge of two legal systems to be comparative legal linguistics, or is there also something which you could call theoretical layer or theoretical dimension of comparative legal linguistics, what we have to know to be able to talk about comparative legal linguistics? How do you see it?
Yes, I see that. I agree with Jaakko Husa, who says that comparative legal linguistics is basically a combination of legal linguistics, as he's already defined it, plus comparative law, and so it introduces areas that we might not have to study if we're doing legal linguistics, for example, purely in terms of a common law country like the United Kingdom or Canada. There are many things we wouldn't have to look at all. Whereas with comparative legal linguistics, we'd need to have some knowledge of, probably, some knowledge of legal translation, or and other items too, legal cultures, however we choose to define those. And I've found about 7 or 8 or more definitions of legal culture. That's not new to any of us here. So we have to, how to say, comparative legal linguistics needs a lot more skill and a lot more knowledge than simple legal linguistics. So, for example, when I'm teaching or helping learners, let's say, acquire the knowledge they need to operate in English, I will, the focus, the academic, theoretical focus will be very narrow. And actually, I have had students complain to my face because I said, look, we cannot avoid doing some theory. And they say, no, we want only practice. And there are several examples of this. They don't get angry, but they just don't want to do the theoretical background. Whereas comparative legal linguistics does involve a lot more. Hopefully, I've at least partly answered your question.
Can I ask maybe a very technical question? So
yes.
If I, as a Finn, am familiar with Finnish language and Danish language,
yes.
and familiar with the Finnish legal system and the Danish legal system, can I call me as comparative legal linguistic?
Probably, yes. In fact, if you remember, the party at the Kalanko at the Swedish club for the Finnish lawyer, she has knowledge not only of Finnish law, but also of other laws in Scandinavia, but she excluded Iceland, I remember. I would certainly describe her as a comparative legal linguist because she has a good knowledge, a good in-depth knowledge of not only the legal systems, but also the languages.
Okay. So maybe we continue more and look more closely of the elements of comparative legal linguistics. You had a slide which I could get before your presentation, and you are having a list of the core elements, so legal concept, legal culture, legal translation, it means legal dictionary,
yes.
Legal terminology, comparative law, legal history. It's quite heavy. It's quite heavy. Do you think that all these are needed? Also, if comparative legal linguistics is either research or taught at the universities?
No, it's an excellent question. I'd not really thought about that before, but the items I listed, and they are quite many, they're not all. One item not on there, for example, is legal informatics, which Heikki encouraged me to include in my research, but I never got round to it. There are certain items that are not listed. I actually have a list of them elsewhere. There are lots of items that perhaps should be there. And my general answer to your question would be that every course has to be tailored to the student or students. So before doing any program or any course, I would try and get information about the needs. It's called, a needs analysis. And so you ask a whole list of questions about what they hope to get from what are their expectations from the course or from the program, and that can guide one in deciding what to include on the list of essential items in comparative legal linguistics. Because if we're going to do only legal linguistics, it's much simpler. And that's basically what I was doing at Riga Graduate School of Law. We were focusing on how English is used in legal contexts. So that we'd be looking on the course in legal writing. It was first of all how to do it, but I had actual examples of like a blog, law reports. There's a whole list of them, 7 or 8 of them. A public information leaflet was another one. Students got actually very involved in that. They were delighted. So to sum up my reply to your question, I would find out what students are interested in and try and find out the points that they have in common.
Okay, thank you. Maybe I have a concrete question about that. So if we build up a course or not only a course, but education or even an academic legal field as comparative legal linguistics. So do you think there has to be one person or persons who are specialized in all these dimensions, so that there has to be one who is familiar in legal history, in theory of comparative law, then translation science, and so on? Do you think it is possible? So, or should you need a team of teachers, or how do you do such things so concretely?
Yeah, excellent question. Well, we did address this question when we started the master's program in legal linguistics at Riga Graduate School of Law, and basically I did what I could, and I knew what I couldn't do. Although I do legal translation, I don't see myself as actually best qualified to teach it, to be honest. And so we got in, you may know Jan Engberg from Aarhus, brilliant. There are a few other people whom I might also have employed, but he was able and willing to do it. And we did the same in other areas of law. One example is with legal legislative drafting. And there are almost no courses in that anywhere in the world. But we got a guy I forget how, Mark Siegel. I don't know if Heikki met Mark. He's an American, travels all over the world teaching legislative drafting. And we got him to come. It was wonderful. And so, and then Heikki came at the beginning to teach comparative legal linguistics, which I don't see myself as qualified to do. Maybe if I'm successful today, maybe I will then be qualified to teach it. But even then, and when Heikki was not able to continue, we managed to get Markus Galdia. Can you imagine? So we would call these Lufthansa professors. You fly them in, they stay for a week, and the two advantages are, first of all, you don't have to ask the university to employ somebody full time. You just fly them in and pay them. And the second thing is that it is possible by doing it in this way to deal with what you need to deal with. Did I answer your question?
Yes, but I would like to ask a little bit more.
Yes.
To be concrete, so you were asking, and you are asking, of course, what do a student or what do students have to know? what they need to know. I mean, you have a long list, but do you think a student, you have to be, or maybe I formulate it in another way. So you have students interested in legal linguistics and then interested in comparative legal linguistics.
Yes.
You build up a course. So are you just pointing out that they have to know history, or are you teaching them history, or you are pointing out that they have to know the society, or they have to know the legal culture, or are you also trying to guarantee that they have minimum knowledge at least of legal history of the countries concerned, or about the legal culture of the countries concerned, and what more? You are also in your papers, in some articles, referring to need to understand also the social context of law, and you are claiming that it's not enough to have only legal history and comparative law, but and legal culture, they need even something more. But how you organize it, and what is somehow the minimum knowledge? Is it something that they have to be convinced that they have to know, or is it so that you deliver the knowledge to the students during such courses? Or in the ideal world, let's speak.
Well, actually, what I encourage students to think for themselves and to go out and find an area that they want to write their thesis about. And this is what many of them have done, in fact. So the thesis, the article I wrote 3 years ago, it focused on, I think, four excellent theses written by students on the legal linguistics program at Riga Graduate School of Law. And I've just taken one of those, which is about the meaning of ship owner and crew member and so on and so on. And so I have very little knowledge about this, but the student who wrote this thesis, and it was an excellent thesis, as were all the others on this in this paper, she went out and she did her research, and that's it. So I encourage students to research in areas. This normally comes up in conversation, because, for example, I use materials, and I do focus on a materials-centered course because this is specialist English, which is my area anyway. Not specialist English, specialist legal English. And so in conversation in the class, for example, this would come up. Somebody may ask a question. I might say, well, why didn't you go and research that? I can't answer it because I'm not skilled in that area. Do some research on either one of the papers you write on this program, or even for your thesis. And that's basically what they did. So when we had our program at the Legal Graduate School of Law, it was actually something that was constantly on the move because there were no comparable programs. So what do? I had some ideas of what students needed to know, and then we had to adapt as we went. So some things we started out with, we left out later, or we changed them, and also vice versa. Some things we didn't have, and later we did have. But we did, on the whole, stay with legislative drafting, comparative legal linguistics, legal translation. Those were actually the core courses. And after that, we were a bit flexible. But it is one of the challenges of running a program like this, because the people who know about legislative drafting and who can teach it, both in practice and as an academic area. There's a Greek woman at a university in London with an unpronounceable name, like Zanthropopoulos or something like that. But she's well known as being brilliant with legislative drafting. I think it was some university in London. We were very lucky to get this guy, Mark Siegel, the American, absolutely brilliant. And the students were just fascinated by him. And in that, we were very lucky because we had Professor Matala, who started with comparative legal linguistics. And he's wonderful as a lecturer, just to listen to. And students would prick up their ears, as we say, and they'd be listening. The brains would be whirring around like machinery. The language from the professor is like oil for the machinery inside the brain, and it would get them thinking.
Okay, so thank you. So maybe I continue with your very promising experiences you have had, but at the same time you are writing, and you also mentioned in your speech that there are huge challenges and obstacles to integrate comparative legal linguistics into the legal education at the universities. How do you see it? How comes it? Because you are writing also in your papers that more and more lawyers, legal practitioners, and academics are working in another language than their own, and they are working in English and so on. But still, there seems to be quite difficult to integrate comparative legal linguistics into the academic education. Why?
Yes.
Or what are the challenges, but mainly the obstacles?
Yes, I can explain that by comparing legal linguistics or comparative legal linguistics with comparative law, because these are both areas of law. It's like I'm working on a book at the moment on this by Jaakko Husa. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It will be out published next spring. And his idea is that the comparative legal linguistics, comparative law, and I was apply this to comparative legal linguistics as well. It's constantly in process. It's like this character from fiction, Der Fliegende Holländer, the Flying Dutchman. So doomed forever to sail the seas, but never to reach port. Of course, you could say similar things about other areas of law. They're all developing. But I'm not so sure that many people actually do study comparative legal linguistics. We had a teacher from Sweden, an excellent teacher, very famous, even has worked on the Venice Commission as well. And he felt really not happy because students were not interested in comparative law. Their attitude is, what's the point? Are we ever going to be using comparative law in reality? Do we need it? But of course, many of them would find out in reality, if they're working with a law firm or with government, for example, or with an NGO with foreign connections, that yes, comparative law is a very useful area. But it's, again, that's an area difficult to define, as indeed is legal linguistics. I'm not sure I've answered your question fully, though.
Yes, you did, and you were referring to difficulties to teach in comparative law.
Yes.
And you were referring to difficulties to have comparative law as a legal field. And I have the same experience. So I'm teaching every summer at the summer school in Salzburg, which is a European comparative private law summer school. And I always ask the students, they are from 28 countries, not only European countries. I'm asking them whether they have had or will have comparative law as a course or as a field at their university. And the students, there are very few students who have a positive answer. They are interested to participate in a course in which we are teaching Finnish law, Danish law, Swedish law, German law, Canadian law, and so on. And they would like to know how the system works, but they are not so much interested in theoretical questions. But all the professors in that course or in the summer school are asked to start with a brief introduction to history of the country concerned.
Yes.
And this is the only way we try to be comparatist also. But we have then also a roundtable about comparative law questions. But I can see that your students are not able to combine the substantial knowledge they get with the theoretical questions. I was, for instance, talking about Eurocentrism versus global approach and so on, but they don't see it as important. They see the concrete private law questions, for instance, in BGP and so on. But it's interesting anyhow to see that comparative law has not this position in the curriculum in Europe or outside Europe. We would like to see it to have.
Yes.
And but still, I have a feeling that you have professors in history of law, professors in private law who are informed or having not quite that going knowledge in comparative law theory too. But I think maybe the comparative legal linguistics has the similar problem that you have concrete questions you would like to know and concrete problems you would like to solve, that then when you come to the theoretical questions, they might be difficult for a law student. They are interested to us as researchers, but this is only my opinion. I don't know, how do you see it?
I would go along with that as far as my own knowledge goes.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I've read of comparative law, and the same would go for legal history. I find that fascinating. And the studies I'm doing, the research was still a PhD many years ago now. I did a paper on Finnish legal history, which Heikki will remember. And I really enjoyed checking that out. I did a lot of reading for it, and Heikki said it was not too bad. And it was fascinating, but it depends on individual needs. And for example, it's only quite late in life that I discovered some interest in academia. When I was studying law, I made the choice not to go to university to do it, but to go to a law firm in the city of London, where you learn it on the job. And that's okay up to a point. But a lot depends on the individual and their own interests, I think. But there are lots of areas like this that are like legal culture, some wonderful books on legal culture, and also cultures generally. But not everybody is interested in them. But I have the view that without some kind of theoretical knowledge of, for example, of legal history of a particular country, it's not that useful to know. The absence of it is not going to help if one is dealing with lawyers in that country, for example. They have the background knowledge.
Yes, I agree. But maybe we refer so briefly also to the discussions about possibilities of new branches of law. You were referring to Carlo Tuori's
Yes.
article, or maybe it was his book.
It's Ratio and Voluntas, I think it was that one,
that's
yes.
true, where he is speaking about the competition between academics. and between the different branches, the new branches at the academia. So
Yes.
do you agree him that comparative legal linguistics has these same problems you have, for instance, in the new fields of law and technology, or law and communication and environmental law? Or how do you see it? Is it something typical also when discussion about comparative legal linguistics as academic field is concerned, or are there some very special features in when comparative legal linguistics is concerned?
Yes, I didn't stress this perhaps enough, but academia generally, so it seems, does not see legal linguistics or comparative legal linguistics as something worthy of attention by academia, because academia is academia, and practice is practice. And this leads to another item that you might want to ask as a question about training, because training is not really the same as education. They overlap in the same way as one might say that legal linguistics or comparative legal linguistics overlaps with comparative law. But many in academia, don't ask me why, because I couldn't answer. But so it seems, according to my research, that many academicians don't really see legal linguistics as a serious subject of study, and nor do students, as I mentioned earlier on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Actually, you are now following or guiding us to the next question I wanted to talk with you, and it is the real work application of legal
Yes.
linguistics. So,
Yes.
because I think your point about difference between education and training is in this context very important. And I had a feeling when I read some of your papers, especially with the concrete examples and the answers you have got of the people. So you had quite interesting empirical materials in your thesis. I could see that somehow the people who already are ready with their studies and who are working in the legal practice, they see it more clearly that there is need for linguistic knowledge, and not only linguistic knowledge, but also understanding of the elements and importance of comparative legal linguistics. Do you agree, or how do you see so clear this difference as I see?
You brought up a very interesting point, which I failed to focus on, and that is that people who already have experience in practice may be more interested. Today, we have bachelor studies and master studies, one after the other, more or less throughout Europe, I think. Whereas previously, you might do a master's study later after you've been involved in practice. And I actually found, and then people might or might not do a PhD later, but that's to open the door to success in academia, I think. So, oh gosh, I've forgotten my line of thinking. Can you repeat your question, please?
No, I saw that. Is it actually more? Do you have more people interested in comparative legal linguistics when among people who are already done their studies?
Yes.
Or
yes.
would it be more important to talk about legal linguistics in the context of training than in the context of academic education? So how do you see it? Or
Right.
do you see that they are equally important? Or how do you see it? Yes.
Right. I would say that certainly when we have, from my private clients, I see, I don't deal with universities at all. Other than the University of Lapland. But most of the people who are doing basically legal linguistics with me, it was advertised as legal English, but it's legal linguistics in the sense of how language is used in legal contexts. So that's the practical application of legal linguistics. But in terms of my private practice generally, and also at the Riga Graduate School of Law, our students on the legal linguistics program, almost all, not quite all, but almost all, and they had some even very considerable experience in practice. So we have one guy, if we stay in touch, an Australian guy living in Czech Republic. He'd been a lawyer in Australia for years. And he must be my age, he's coming up for 80, and he's still there. And there are others younger. He was the oldest, I think, but we had other people as well who had been practicing for many years. A great woman from Ireland, practicing lawyer. We didn't have many, indeed we may not have had any people who came from academia to study. And of the theses that from our students that I looked at in my paper in 2022, all of them were from legal practice, but they had some years, at least 10 years experience. And another thing we found also was that most of the people who came were either retired, or they didn't need to work, or they were women having a baby. They're having their time off, but they wanted to keep busy. And they were fabulous students, I have to say. But those are the people who were interested.
Okay, so maybe for their practical needs or their practical experiences.
I'm not quite sure why they came. And at one time we used to ask people why they were coming, or why they had come, and what they had gained. But I think the administration, the law school, decided there was too much of this kind of administration, and so we stopped getting feedback and answers to questions and so on. I managed to get answers from on 2 or 3 of the papers I wrote for my thesis. Either included, the one way or another, they were included in the list. And you probably saw at least one list of questions. These are legal academics or legal practitioners answering particular questions. And I learned a lot from them.
Okay. I would, in the end of our discussion, speak a little bit more about English.
Yes.
About English as a global language. To be honest, I've been worried that we are so much writing and speaking in English only, because we have had the rich tradition in the Nordic country to speak all the Nordic languages with colleagues. Now we are shifting more and more into English. And the same concerns also even with the discussions with our German colleagues or the German Max Planck Institutes. They are now shifting their language into English, but at the same time, I have a feeling that it's not English we are speaking.
Oh,
it's something which you call that it is so global English. And having more and more distance from the Anglo or the legal English as a language in Britain or in the United States or in Australia. And I, for instance, have a feeling that I'm not able to speak English in a way I would like to when I would be a person discussing about Shakespeare with my English colleagues and so on.
Yes.
It's something how to say, above or below the real English. I think it is Euro English or English in European law discussions or English in legal history. So there are many, not only variations, so I would say local variations or regional variations, but also variations between the legal fields, because I have a feeling that I'm quite good in EU law in English, but I'm very bad in English when criminal law is concerned.
Yeah. Okay.
And again, when I'm speaking about theoretical questions in legal history, I'm quite good. But when I'm speaking about medieval Finnish law in English, I'm a little bit lost. So
Yes.
how do you comment these dilemmas we see? And I think you also see the dilemma as the one who is always checking our texts.
Yes. Because, for example, Jaakko won't mind my saying, I'm checking a book he's writing on comparative law. I'm only on chapter 2, and it's already brilliant because, well, you know, he's a very, very clever guy. And when he introduced me to the book, he said, look, he said, I may be Johnny Foreigner, as he described himself, but I do have my own style in English. Well, he already knows that I don't interfere with somebody's style in English unless it's really necessary. And we've been working together long enough to know that if I propose something, there's probably some quite good reason for it. So, I have this with others as well. I've been working for years with an Estonian translator who translates the annual report of the Chancellor of Justice into English. And also twice a year we do cases from either the Supreme Court or the constitutional bench. And when we started in 2006, which is already a long time ago, we almost came to blows because he's a very smart guy with his own views. I'm a bit less smart, but I still, as typically English, I still have my own views. But now we hardly ever clash. I mean, for years we've hardly ever clashed. And his English has just got progressively better and better. But it's still Estlish, as Estonian, there's Germanish and German and what have you. But I think the best comment I read about this was from Annalisa Scheer, if that's the correct pronunciation of her name, which I've cited in my paper, my thesis. Yes. And that, so there's English is developing in its own way, unrecognizable to many, not least the English. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. It was a very dry Danish humor from her. And there we have it, I think. I make the point with clients when I'm working on their text that I'm not going to try and impose my typical, basically quite an upmarket, well-educated kind of brand of English on someone who's from Finland or from anywhere else, especially if it's professional language. And so we have to find a balance. And it's easy to know when there's a question to ask. For example, does the client want to choose this word or that word or another word, which sometimes happens. But I do know what's right and what's wrong, what sounds right, what fits in English, for example. And I would say that's for English all over the world. And this is partly my problem with this choice of terming the discipline, not legal linguistics, but Eurolinguistics. It doesn't work in English, not in anybody's English. But I was very careful because I don't want to offend anybody. I cited this famous legal English dictionary from an American guy, and also what the ILA, the Language and Law Association, does. They refer to legal linguistics everywhere. They may change, but at the end of the day, with that one, because I think you're going to come back to that, I know that Jaakko Husa and Markus Galdia both prefer legal linguistics because that term has become established. So basically what I see is a group of academics, some of them very well known, who've been in this field a lot longer than I have, and they will see this Englishman, because I know you know what goes on in academia. They will just see me as an interloper, someone who's just arrived rather late in the day, and who does he think he is? We know better. It's a bit like that in my view, but I would say that almost anything is preferable to Eurolinguistics in this. But in Canada they use it no problem because there's Canadian legal English. And I was presented, when I went to Montreal, I was presented by, what's his name, Robert Leckie, is a well-known professor from there, with a great big book on the laws of Canada in French and in English. Very nice. They can handle it. But going back to your original question, as a text editor and proofreader, I have to find a very fine balance. And the most important thing is to be respectful to the authors, whatever it is they're writing, and to discuss with them. And even with my Estonian translator, whom I mentioned, every year, every time we work together, we have some points that we need to discuss. Not for very long. And if he's insistent on saying, this is how I want to do it, I don't interfere. Hopefully I've answered your question.
Yes, but I would like to still ask, how do you see that is English really becoming something which is not English? Or do you have a feeling that when we are more and more in academia, Europe-wide and worldwide using English is changing? So in that way that we have more and more somehow common understanding, or trying to put all the legal systems in one work. For instance, if I remember right, you are talking or writing in one of your article about tort and liability and that such questions. So what is happening? So is it so that we have more and more similarities in our writing when English is concerned? Are we somehow getting lost with the nuances in our legal vocabulary or in our legal understanding when we are using English? And is it so that only the people working in England with the real common law language are then using the English? Or how do you see the situation?
No, I see that the contributions from so-called non-native speakers of English are very valuable in certain areas. And the example you gave there about non-contractual liability instead of tort, wonderful. And I've seen other examples as well. There are in laws, EU laws, for example, legislation, there are definitions. Which we don't have in English, but we need them. They're better it could be produced by somebody from France or from Finland or anywhere in the EU, because there are some people, maybe they've been educated in England or they've worked there, because there are lots of people still do, and they just have a feel for what's right in the language, and so I would never ever talk to, well, not quite never, but to start lecturing somebody from abroad who's using English, and they come up with an idea, for example, a piece of terminology. And that takes us back, of course, to the question jury linguistics, because the people who have chosen this expression and who are using it are very senior academics, highly respected, and so I had to be very careful not to be personal. I've used the Brian Garner's dictionary to support my case, and also what Illa does.
Mhm,
And I've just said,
mhm.
well, I agree with them, and that's it.
Okay. So my last question is about the practical needs to have a coherence in ways we use the most important terms in English. And you were referring to the very difficult concept of rule of law.
Yes.
And referring to the checklist of the Venice Commission. And there long discussion about differences between languages and between countries when the idea of rule of law is concerned. So do you have an idea about the other terms or other concepts we should agree about when we use English language, and could it be possible to have checklists also on them?
Yes, it would be very useful. And of course, the other example was who is a ship owner, and who is a member of the crew, who is a seafarer. And I would never have thought of doing research on that, by the way. But our student at the Riga Graduate School of Law did, and she discovered that different countries have different definitions of who is a seafarer, for example, still after big efforts. So it needs some big institution like the Venice Commission to really put their weight behind international legal definitions, or even, for example, defining something from a foreign law in English, if it's possible. Can I just give you one example?
Please.
Earlier this year, I did another book project for a professor of international law at the University of Graz in Austria. And it's basically about how Russians have been running around Europe for hundreds of years, bullying people, and about their attitude and so on. And he used quite a lot of expressions from other languages. One of them, it's about countries behaving badly. And he uses this German expression, wer kann, darf auch. Well, that's so deeply culturally embedded in German language or German culture that it's almost impossible to express in English, because he was speaking about Russia doing as it pleases and pushing people like Hitler did. They push people, etc., etc. Sorry to get political, but they push people around. I'm sure the English have done it in the past as well, doing what there's a problem in some country, send a battleship and start bombing the cities. Or Copenhagen was a good example, unfortunately. So how to say these expressions are so deeply embedded in a language, it's almost impossible to translate them. Not quite, but a simple dictionary translation doesn't work. But even it doesn't work with some simple examples like the word marriage. And somewhere I've given an example of the pop singer, Jerry Lee Lewis, came to England, married in Mississippi, I think his third wife. He was 22, she was 13 years old, and his cousin. No problem in Mississippi. But in England, when he came, it ended his career because of the scandal. A simple word, marriage. And there are lots of other ones like that too. These other people.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, as legal historian, I know also the difficulties. We have the very, very interesting term lautamies, which is the layman at the court.
Oh,
And we have had many discussions whether it is jury. No, it's not a jury, because we know what jury was doing or is doing. Is it something Schöffen in German and so on? So you don't find the translation always, although you would like to have. And there, for instance, as you mentioned, so the knowledge in history, knowledge in terminology, knowledge in the development of a legal language
yes.
are needed. So as my conclusion, so of our discussion. So
Yes.
I'm very happy with your answers. So I think we have been able to touch the most important questions in your thesis,
Yes.
the main points of your articles. I think also the last question maybe, which I would, for my personal reasons, you to answer is, why are you so heavily criticizing the idea of jury linguistics?
It's because I'd almost finished my research in 2023, and I had presented my presentation today, but not everything. And then I discovered that this book was going to be published so I presented my presentation in Krakow in September 2023, and this book on neurolinguistics was published the following month. So I bought it and I read it, and I only needed to read about half a dozen articles in it. Because to be very arrogant, I found most of them not worth reading, but the ones early on, Heikki's input, Marcus Galdia, Jaakko Husa, very interesting. But I thought it was very strange because Jaakko Husa has commented in his own work that legal linguistics, he thought that legal linguistics had become like the expression for this area of study and practice. And for me, it was very strange that a group of academics, 2 French, 1 Polish, and Heikki a bit, I'm sorry, they suddenly, without any warning and without any explanation, suddenly come up after legal linguistics has become used and a normal expression, if you like. Why now? Why so late? Why was there nothing about it? Had they been angry about it for years? Because as I've said, I'm quite sure the English are not welcome everywhere because we have quite bad attitudes sometimes, and I've never felt completely comfortable in academia for reasons probably due to myself, but I thought it was very odd. I just had an idea that they didn't like it, that some the new kid on the block is the American expression.
Yes.
New kid on the block comes along, translates Heikki's book, and etc. from French to French version to English, and then has a program, is running the only ever master's program in legal linguistics at the Riga Graduate School of Law. And frankly, if I was in their position, I wouldn't like it either. I wouldn't be very happy about this. So I might well, if some foreign guy came along and was doing something like this in French, for example, I would expect late in the day, when other French academics have been doing this area of study for their whole career, basically. It just seems so unfair. And in a way it is, but life is about luck, so much about luck, and meeting the right people at the right time. As I mentioned at the beginning of my thesis, I met Heikki. I had a background in law, language, and education. Met Heikki, and then was asked to do. I did Heikki's book, and then my university was asked by the Latvian government to run a course in basically legal linguistics.
Yes.
Well, it's a whole series of things that don't become clear until you look back afterwards.
Yes.
That
Okay.
expression, by the way,
The-
I would like to tell you, comes from a book by an Italian author called Susanna Tomorrow, called Follow Your Heart. It's worth
Mhm.
reading. If you haven't read it already,
Thank you.
I would recommend
No,
it.
I'm asking this for very personal reasons, because I'm working a lot with German colleagues and with Danish colleagues, and they are always speaking about Jura. Ich bin Jura-Student, and
Yes.
in Denmark they have Jura. So Juras beste Historia and so on.
Yes.
And we are often discussing why they use this Jura, and they say it is more than law, it's more than recht or ret, because it's all about the skills the becoming jurist should have, and I was just inspired about the discussion you took up in your thesis about this dilemma or discussion between the terms legal and juris. But I think I'm happy with your answer. I think I close now our discussion and open
Yes.
open the floor for questions of the audience if someone wants to ask something. So I'm ready to use maybe 5 minutes for that.
Yes.
Before we finish.
Okay.
Or maybe Heikki, you would like to comment or have question or has a question and so on.
Okay.
Is there
any
some...
questions?
Okay. So maybe not. Heikki is there. We are not hearing his voice. So
Heikki
maybe
is here.
Heikki is there and have been all the time. And
Yes.
there are also some others. Let's see how it works with Heikki again.
Heikki, can you hear us? Heikki's on the phone.
Yes, I'm opening now the phone to Heikki. Okay.
I can see his lips moving, but I
Yes.
don't hear. Oh,
No. Okay.
So unfortunately, I have trying to let's say to press the button, microphone, so and also the other buttons, but unfortunately it didn't work. So for my part, perhaps it is enough that I thank you all very much, and especially main actors, means the opponent, Professor Retto Vanamo and Mr. Goddard, for a very, very interesting and high-level scientific discussion. So I apologize. It is certainly my clumsiness that we had technical problems. So, and also I would like to thank the University of Lapland very much for arranging this event, which really, as I said, has been highly interesting. And then I would like to wish all of you have a very nice autumn and successful autumn.
thank you. Thank you, Heikki.
So thank you so much on my behalf, and I congratulate you, Chris. So you did it.
Thank you.
And now it's the faculty who makes the decisions, and I think it will be. I think very soon when the faculty then accepts your thesis. I hope so, at least.
Okay.
Thank you.
So it's too early to open a bottle of Johan Freitag. It's Johan Freitag is a Finnish vodka. It's sitting in the fridge, chilling. So maybe it'll have to wait for a bit.
No, maybe not. So at least you did it today, and we had a nice discussion. I'm really happy for the discussion. So thank you.
Oh, good.
I got many interesting answers, and it is so fantastic to have you also in person. not I mean on the screen, not only correcting our texts. And
Yes,
so,
yes.
so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to Heikki and also the University of Lapland inviting me and so on. So have a nice autumn. Bye.
Thank you very much, and thanks to
Bye.
everybody, to you and to the university. Thank you very
Bye.
much. Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye-bye, bye-bye.
Bye.